a Bulgarian state. It was known by the British press as Big Bulgaria. And this Bulgarian state would have covered not only modern Bulgaria, but also the Aegean Sea coastline of Greece today. It would have covered the whole of Macedonia. It would have covered large parts of northern Greece. It would have covered the southern part of Kosovo, and it would even have stretched into Albania, kind of just over from where the motorway now goes beyond Prizren. At the same time, Serbia and Montenegro expanded. Montenegro would have got some coast. Montenegro would have got Gusinja and Plava, Albanian population. Montenegro and Serbia would almost have joined, not quite. And Serbia, under the Treaty of San Stefano, would have gained the Niš region and also Mitrovica and Bushri in Kosovo. However, the other great powers, were extremely concerned about this Big Bulgaria idea, because for Britain and Austria-Hungary in particular, this Big Bulgaria was seen as a potential Russian satellite. It was a projection of Russian power westwards into Europe. So there's Britain and Austria-Hungary against the Treaty of San Stefano, but also a lot of people here were against the Treaty of San Stefano. Abdul Fresheri, who I mentioned earlier, he got together with his brother, Sami Fresheri, who ran a Turkish language newspaper in Istanbul. He got together with some of the local traditional leaders from Kosovo, a few from Albania, but overwhelmingly from Kosovo, and the leader of the Albanians in Gusinja and Plava, Ali Pasha of Gusinja, got together and formed what was called the Albanian League of Prizren. And the agreed aim of the Albanian League of Prizren in the first instance was to prevent the establishment of any of these Slav states, Big Bulgaria or the Serbian expansion, on Albanian territory. That was the first objective. Now, as I said, Britain and Austria-Hungary objected to the Treaty of San Stefano. Russia was exhausted after the war with Turkey, and so under the guidance of Bismarck, it was possible to persuade Russia to revise the Treaty of San Stefano. And so 3 months later, in the summer of 1878, there was a huge congress of all the major powers in Berlin, the Congress of Berlin, where basically the map of Eastern Europe or Southeastern Europe was redrawn. Without going into masses of detail, Big Bulgaria was dismantled, and in fact there was now a very little Bulgaria, which was under a German prince, related to our Duke of Edinburgh, actually, the Battenberg family. He was, like some of these other characters in Romania and Serbia, he was a prince, but he was subject to the Ottoman Sultan. The southern part of Bulgaria, modern Bulgaria, was actually made into an even looser autonomous state, part of the Turkish Empire with a Christian governor, rather curiously called Eastern Rumelia. Actually, 8 years later, Eastern Rumelia and Bulgaria did unite. That happened there, and in Serbia was allowed to keep Niš, so that house, Niš ends up in Serbia now. The Montenegrins were given the port of Bar. They'd never had access to the sea before, and in theory they were given Gusinja and Plava over the mountains there. It left, the Treaty of Berlin now left all of Kosovo still as part of the Ottoman Empire, and all of Albania still as part of the Ottoman Empire. However, the Albanian League of Prizren continued to exist, and in fact its first activity was concentrated on this point about Gusinja and Plava, because the Albanian League was saying no Albanian territory to be part of a Slav state, and so they objected to Montenegro getting Gusinja and Plava, and in fact the Albanian League of Prizren was rather successful on that, because the great powers decided, eventually, to change the Treaty of Berlin, and Gusigny and Plava were allowed to remain as part of the Ottoman Empire at the moment, and instead the Montenegrins were given Ulcinj, which is how your Albanian holiday resort of Ulcinj ends up being in Montenegro. But meanwhile, Freshery and his colleagues, and I'm sure you don't really need me to know this, had become more and more active, and they now demanded of the Ottoman Sultan a single vilayet, a single governorate of all the Albanian peoples of the Ottoman Empire, with its own elected council. This is pretty novel in the Ottoman Empire, having elected anything. So its own elected council, Albanian language schools, which were virtually unheard of at the time, and the courts throughout these Albanian lands to apply the Kanun of Lek Dukagjini. Amazingly, the Ottoman Turks, the Abdülhamid II, the Sultan, in the early part of 1880, actually accepted these demands for an Albanian vilayet. But rather typically, 3 weeks later, he changed his mind. The Albanian League of Prizren, which by then had become almost a sort of separate administration covering Kosovo and Skopje, began for the first time to talk about independence for all the Albanian people of the Ottoman Empire. This inevitably worried the authorities in Istanbul, and when it was reported that the Albanian League of Kosovo, Prizren was actually going to send troops down to Bitola and to Shkodra in northern Albania, I don't know if it was really true they were going to do it, but anyway, there were reports. The Ottomans, who by then recovered from their war with Russia a bit, sent their large army to Skopje, occupied Skopje, then came up the railway to Mitrovica, occupied Prizren, and the Albanian League of Prizren was destroyed. Freshery himself was arrested in Elbasan. He was originally sentenced to death. That was later commuted to imprisonment, but his health was broken, and he ended up living in Istanbul and died quite young. And really that was the end of the first attempt to create an Albanian identified entity in Europe. There was a brief attempt, as many of you will know, to revive the Albanian League of Prizren here in Pale in 1899 by Haji Zeka, who'd been a member of the original Prizren League. It came after another period of Ottoman maladministration, bad administration, but the Turks managed to deal with it, and the League of Pale never really quite took off, and sadly Haji Zeka himself was assassinated in 1902. But the point I want to make about all that is that the first attempt to create an Albanian entity in Europe, which came out of the Albanian League of Prizren, didn't come out of the blue. It didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened as a result of European politics. It happened as a result of the Balkan Eastern crisis, which involved my country, involved France, involved Russia and Austria-Hungary. So there, Kosovo was, very much part of events in Europe. If we then go to the other crisis I wanted to talk about, Balkan Wars. Again, Kosovo played its part in big events that affected the whole of Europe. The Balkan Wars really grew out of the growing crisis in the Turkish Empire. In the early years of the 20th century, there were attempts by Sultan Abdülhamid to reform the Turkish army, the Ottoman army. And the Ottoman army, of course, included quite a lot of Albanian officers, including from Kosovo. They sent German training officers to the Turkish army. The effect of this was to make a lot of the younger officers in the Turkish army realise how backward the Ottoman Empire had become. and they set up a secret committee within the Turkish army, the Committee of Union and Progress, which became known as the Young Turks. And in 1908, the Young Turks staged a military coup in Istanbul, in Constantinople, and forced the Sultan Abdülhamid to restore the parliament that had existed back in 1876, that Abdul Fresheri had been a member of. I mean, not the individuals, but the idea of the parliament. So again, the Ottoman Empire was to have a parliament, and it looked as if it was moving to more democratic structures. And in fact, a lot of Kosovo Albanians supported the Young Turks because they thought it would modernise the Turkish Empire and give more rights to the Albanians, the Arabs, and all the other non-Turkish people. So you had people like Bayram Suri and Isa Boletin and perhaps most famous of all, Hasan Bey Pristina, supporting the Young Turks. Hasan Bey Pristina was in fact the MP for Pristina in this new Ottoman Parliament in 1908. But it rapidly became clear that actually the objectives of the Young Turks ran counter to the interests, ran against the interests of the Albanians, because what the Young Turks really wanted to do was to centralise power in Istanbul, Constantinople, and to Turkify still this very widespread Ottoman Empire. So they were trying to introduce the Turkish language in the Albanian provinces of the Balkans, trying to introduce the Turkish language in Syria, where people spoke Arabic, and to introduce a Turkish system. And so people like Hasan Bey Pristina very rapidly moved to the opposition in the Turkish parliament. The Young Turks had a lot of problems. There was a lot of infighting among the Young Turks themselves, and this all provoked a situation in 1910 where there was a serious uprising in Kosovo. It was eventually put down, but it helped weaken the Ottoman Empire further. Then in 1911, Italy, which I was saying was a sort of great power, Italy actually attacked the Turkish Empire. This was all to do with the last stages of the European scramble for Africa, because the Ottoman Empire still had one territory in Africa, which was Libya. And Italy wanted to take Libya as part of the scramble for Africa. Italy attacked this weakened Ottoman Empire. Italy actually, in the Italo-Turkish War in 1911, quite interesting, first war where aeroplanes were used to bomb targets. The Italian Air Force bombed the Turkish garrisons in Libya, forced them out. Italy took over Tripoli or Libya, but again it further weakened this remaining Ottoman Empire under the Young Turks. And the Turks were then forced to call another election to their parliament in 1912. But what they tried to do, because they had this policy of Turkification, what they tried to do was to gerrymander or fix the election so that these annoying Albanians like Hasan Pristina would not get elected to the parliament. And so a parliament was elected, but with mainly Turkish representatives. And this again provoked a rising in Kosovo involving Hasan Pristina, Bayram Suri, Isa Boletin, and the rebels pretty well took control of the whole of Kosovo and of Skopje. And Hasan Pristina then presented his famous 14 points, which demanded much the same things as the Albanian League of Prizren had demanded. That is, a single administrative unit within the Ottoman Empire for all the Albanians, Albanian language schools, Albanians in the Ottoman army only to serve in Albanian territories, and again, courts to apply the law, the Kanun of Dukagjini.